Hello there, academic senators, department chairs, and anybody else that really wants to learn about the equivalency process at MiraCosta. I'm Jeff Ahara, the equivalency chair for the coming year 2022-2023. Because of the revolving door nature of department chairships and academic senate positions, we have new people coming in all the time. Maybe not everybody is all that familiar with the equivalency process. It's not a bad idea for us to make this video. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, so right off the bat, two documents that really matter. One is from the State Chancellor's Office. This is a handbook of minimum qualifications for faculty and administrators in California community colleges. And the other one is from our own Administrative Procedure 7211.2, which is on minimum qualifications and equivalencies. I'll be showing you little snippets of both of these documents today. So hold on to your hats, people. Let's start with the first one. Okay, so here we are, 16th edition of minimum qualifications. Riveting reading. You can get here by going to Google and searching minimum qualifications, California community colleges, and that's how that's how I got here. I think that's how everybody gets here as well. And I'm sure you'll be glued to the pages of this document. It's thrilling reading, let me tell you. Let me show you what the salient points are for your department. Okay, so left-hand column, this is part of that handbook. A big long list of lots of disciplines. 3 columns. There's a dark blue column, medium blue column, and light blue column corresponding to levels A, B, and C. This is actually from our AP. We identify those disciplines requiring a master's degree. We call those part of level A. Other disciplines that are requiring a bachelor's degree, and they don't typically offer master's degree in those fields, right? So health and safety, maybe not something that you would find master's degree programs in. And so somebody who teaches at a community college would be probably going to have a baccalaureate as well as some professional experiences. And there are other disciplines like gunsmithing. So if you wanted to teach gunsmithing at MiraCosta, any degree would be acceptable if it's accompanied by appropriate amounts of professional experience. And that's going to be specified discipline by discipline. Each discipline has its own minimum requirements for experience and a description of that experience, okay? And so this is part of the handbook. Other parts of the handbook, I mean, the rest of the handbook is more detailed, right? So here, this actually tells you what is actually okay to meet minimum qualifications outright, okay? In other words, without having to go through equivalency. So in order to teach history at MiraCosta, you can qualify outright by having a master's in history, okay? If you don't have a master's in history, you can still qualify outright if you have a bachelor's in history and a master's in political sciences, humanities, geography, area studies, women's studies, social science, or ethnic studies. Okay? And those, any one of those disciplines, provided you have a master's degree, is going to give you that minimum qual check. Boom, no equivalency required. Right now, if a candidate's degree qualifications do not match up with this. In other words, maybe they have a bachelor's in history, but a master's in, I don't know, something else. I can't think of something right now that would be making the case, but if there was something else that you could have gotten your master's degree in and still qualify to teach history because you have a baccalaureate in history and that master's degree is close enough in content area, then you might be able to make the case. And you'd have to demonstrate, for example, that the master's degree that you got is equivalent to a master's degree in social science, right? And if you were able to do that, I got my master's degree in this discipline, which is equivalent to social science, and I have a baccalaureate in history. That's going to be the foundation for my equivalency request. Okay? And that's the way it works. I mean, this is kind of like what we do for most of our meetings. We get requests in from candidates. We have input from department chairs, and we read through everything very carefully, and then we make a recommendation to Academic Senate, and Academic Senate makes the final decision. The senators are the ones who officially award the yes or no to a candidate's equivalency request. Okay, and so this is a good resource, probably of some importance to anybody who will be affected by the equivalency process coming year. All right. As I just said, department chairs are involved because they're the ones, either they can do the evaluation or the discipline expert that they designate. There has to be some evaluation of the candidate's request. They'll be identifying qualifications, qualifying coursework or qualifying experience that upon which they'll make their case that they're meeting equivalency based on a given criteria, right? And department chairs are going to be evaluating those. We'll talk about that in a bit. Now, senators, you're going to be involved because after the equivalency meets, we will make a recommendation to you, and you'll be reading the candidates' materials, reading our recommendations, and ultimately making the yes or no decision, right? So let's start with department chairs. Okay, first thing, most of the time, what's going to come to you will be a simple, normal garden variety equivalency request, right? That said, you might be looking at an equivalency request coming to your desk, and you might say, well, you know what? This candidate's master's degree isn't something that a lot of people get their degrees in, and they're all good, right? We could save ourselves a lot of work in the future if we were just to establish that this particular degree title is equivalent, comparable to the degree title specified by the list on the Chancellor's Office document, right? And so at that point, you would say, well, let's try doing it this way. I'm going to file a comparable degree title request. If that goes through, then we'll just motor these future candidates right on through the process, equivalency process, without having to require meetings or evaluations. We could shortcut a lot of bureaucracy, and it doesn't really need to happen, right? A variation on that is a minor title degree variation request. These two things are actually kind of different, and that's what I want to talk about next, right? So we'll come back to the simple equivalency requests later. Right now, we're looking at the difference between the two. What is the difference, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. In some cases, the degree title is going to be seemingly okay, right? But it's not completely clear. Let's look at this a little bit carefully. I mean, if there's any feeling that we need to look at this more carefully, that's what we do. And that's what the comparable degree title review process does, okay? I'll give you an example, okay? In order to teach peanut butter and jelly courses at MiraCosta, the requirement is a master's degree in peanut butter and jelly, okay? Now, you might be receiving a request from a candidate who has their master's degree in nut spreads and marmalades. Maybe another application comes in which the candidate has their master's degree in sandwich fillings. And so these are situations where you might just evaluate that candidate individually, or you might say, well, let's make this permanent. So anybody that comes in with a degree in nuts, spreads, and marmalades will automatically be approved for a degree for meeting the degree requirements of peanut butter and jelly, right? And so in order to do this, it requires full documentation of the degree in nuts, spreads, and marmalades, and we have to run that side by side with a degree in peanut butter and jelly and establish point by point that they're actually the same thing, right? And if we can do that, then that's going to be the basis for validating a degree title equivalency for nuts, spreads, and marmalades, right? That's one possible outcome, right? Now, for that other candidate whose degree is in sandwich fillings, they might actually have a lot of knowledge, adequate knowledge about peanut butter and jelly to teach our courses, right? And so they might totally meet the equivalency requirements for this individual application. But when you look at the degree program in sandwich fillings, they could actually get that degree with a specialization in lunch meats, okay? Bologna, salami, prosciutto. What else? Jamon serrano, right? That candidate, our candidate might actually be qualified in peanut butter and jelly, but this other person who got their degree in lunch meats with a degree title sandwich fillings may not be qualified to teach our courses in peanut butter and jelly, right? In other words, the degree title sandwich fillings is not going to guaranteed meet our requirements in peanut butter and jelly, and therefore that would be something we would be likely to deny, okay? Now you have to realize that the reason why we deny that is not to prevent our current candidate from being hireable, right? We're doing this to prevent future candidates from squeaking in with degrees in bologna when they really need to be expert in peanut butter and jelly, okay? So there's a reason for this, right? And the process requires pretty involved set of documentation. The department chair would be working together with HR and equivalency, and we'd make this happen or not, right? That is the comparable degree title situation. There are other situations where the two degrees are just like obviously okay, right? Maybe master's degree in peanut butter and jelly is the requirement, and a person comes in with a master's degree in jelly and peanut butter because that's the way they make their sandwiches in St. Louis. No, maybe. Another thing that we've just done in the past year is given a blanket okay to situations where maybe the accepted qualifications could include either a master's degree in peanut butter or a master's degree in jelly, and a candidate comes in with a degree title peanut butter and jelly, right? Okay. Under the official equivalency rules, we would have to push this through equivalency, but based on our blanket acceptance of masters in the discipline A and B, when both A and B individually qualify as degree titles. I mean, this is going to save us a little bit of time in the future, right? But these all kind of qualify as minor title degree variations, and they don't require a full-blown documentation. We just pass them through or not at the level of equivalency and pass that recommendation on to academic senate, okay? So that's something to keep in mind, both for department chairs and for senators. Okay. Now, the majority of the requests that you're going to be seeing are going to be simple or normal equivalency requests. People that don't have master's degree that's required or whatever, the baccalaureate or any degree that's required, but they're going to make the case that they meet equivalency, they qualify to teach our courses based on something else, right? So I'm going to go with something that's really kind of like our standard garden variety equivalency request. It's called an A4, right? The A because it requires a master's degree, 4 because we're basically using 24 semester units of graduate level coursework in the discipline to qualify the candidate, okay? So A4 is something to keep in mind. both HR and equivalency kind of push people towards that direction because it tends to be the easiest to satisfy the pathway of least resistance. Okay, so a situation requirement is a master's degree in peanut butter and jelly. Application comes through, the candidate has a bachelor's degree in biology. Think about that. So they don't meet requirement, but they do have 24 semester units of graduate level coursework in peanut butter and jelly, and they can document that. The department chair approves it, boom, we're done. They're equivalent, right? Now, the way this typically works is the candidate is going to get together with HR. HR will assist them putting together the appropriate documentation, which includes a list of the courses and a catalog description of their courses. And that's going to be put to the department chair discipline expert. They're going to evaluate and make their call, basically make their recommendation to the equivalency committee, right? So that's what's going to happen usually before the department chairs are even seeing the equivalency request. Okay. Now, once you get this request, let's see if I can move this out of the way. Once you get the equivalency request, so let's get rid of this entirely, right? You're going to evaluate the documentation item by item, okay? So class by class, right? It's not just a, oh yeah, I approve. We in equivalency need you to go through the list point by point saying, this class is good, this class is good, this class is no good because it's not really graduate level. This class is no good because it is graduate level, but the discipline, the area is not really part of what it needs to be. Okay, this is where the insight of the department chair discipline expert is going to be coming in. Okay, and so you make those calls, and you're going to be informing the equivalency committee of how you're viewing the items in the lists provided by the candidate. Okay. Now, obviously, you're going to be making these calls as objectively as possible without consideration to who the candidate is, because once you make these calls, once you decide that this particular course is a good match for what is graduate level and discipline related, then that kind of establishes a precedent. You can't accept it for this candidate and not accept it for another candidate, right? And so that's another consideration. And once you make your call, it's going to come to the equivalency committee at the next stage, and we'll be picking up the ball from there, right? Actually, it's not true. We actually look at the entire case made by the candidate. There are 5 or 6 members of the committee. Each one looks through the entire package, carefully thinking about things in the light of what the department chair, discipline expert has provided us, in the light of what the institutional standard is, what kinds of things have we seen before from other departments. And each member makes their decision about whether they recommend approval or not based on a summation of lots of different bits of information. Okay? We discuss, we vote, and we pass our recommendation on to Academic Senate, who will probably be seeing that content, seeing that request and recommendation in the following week's Academic Senate meeting. Okay? Now, as department chair, you can expect that if we find that there are any concerns as we're reviewing the content, as we're reviewing an applicant's request, if we see anything mildly sketchy, if we think that there might be even a ghost of a chance that this request will be not recommended for approval, we will send the DC a heads up saying that, hey, you know what, it might be a good idea for you to attend the meeting because we might need some information, right? And so we don't do this if it looks like everything is sailing pretty smoothly and we don't have any concerns. I think probably the majority of the requests that we get do not require a whole lot of discussion. Obviously, the meeting itself is open to the public, and DCs are always welcome to come in and sit in with us. Candidates as well. Candidates relationships. I mean, you could invite anybody you want to attend the Equivalency Committee meeting, but don't usually get too many people apart from those who have stakes in our decisions, right? Now, one thing to keep in mind is that we as the Equivalency Committee will get at the very earliest on Wednesday the materials that we need to review for the meeting that we have on a Friday. Okay? Very frequently, HR is working closely with the candidate to polish up their package so that things can come in front of the Equivalency Committee all tidy and ready to make a decision. And so until it's done in its final draft, it's not passed on to the Equivalency Committee. And so that's why we get it at the very latest hour sometimes. And because we're getting it on Wednesday, sometimes even Thursday, we might not review it until Thursday evening or Friday, in which case our recognition that we need to alert the department chair may not come until shortly before the meeting. Okay? I want you to be aware of that. We understand that sometimes this might not allow a department chair to show up, but you might want to be aware that this is a possibility that could happen to any equivalency request that comes to our committee. All right, senators, your turn. Basically, we meet on the Friday. You guys will have your academic senate meeting the following Friday, which means that we will be submitting our responses. All this information is going to go first to the academic senate president, the academic senate secretary. It'll get put on the consent calendar. And at that point, you'll have access to all the materials that we had plus our recommendation. Okay, which means that you won't have more than a week. You won't have probably more than 4 or 5 days to review the material before your meeting. Again, it's based on the same type of time constraints that we're dealing with. Okay? If you have any concerns, or if we have any concerns, if anybody has any concerns, individual requests may be pulled for discussion. In other words, you could pass requests A, B, D, and E, but hold off on C. You could pull C for discussion later on in the meeting, right? There are other things. It's not just requests. And I could promise you that equivalency will be coming to the Academic Senate to talk about the eminence issue and the DC letter issue in the coming academic year. Right. Let me show you the other document that you're going to care about. Okay, here we go. AP 7211.2. Our Bible. Okay. Not exactly, because we don't follow the dictates of this particular Bible terribly closely. For one, there's the department chair letter issue, right? So if you look at C here, okay, so it's highlighted for you. Maybe it's better if I just don't highlight it at all, right? It says that department chair reviews the equivalency request. Yeah, you're totally going to do that, okay? If the department chair wishes to support the request, they must notify the equivalency committee and send a letter of support to the equivalency committee chair to be attached. Now, the problem with this is that the equivalency committee does not really care about whether the DC supports or does not support the equivalency request, right? If the department chair receives an equivalency request, whether they support it or not, they need to evaluate the request and make their decisions known to the equivalency committee. That's the important part. Okay? In other words, we see letters of support that do not address the qualifications submitted by the candidate, and that's not good from our end. we want the insight from the DC or discipline expert to inform our own individual decisions. Okay, and so this is something that reflects our current practice. It's been our current practice, not from at least the time that I took on my role in Equivalency Committee as a member, not as chair. And so I think that it's high time for us to revise our AP to reflect that. Okay? The other thing that you might notice that if you look at the criteria for equivalency, what would be ways in which a person could qualify for teaching at MiraCosta without having the degree, the qualifications listed in the Chancellor's Office list. There's criterion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When you get to criterion 6, right, it says candidate may qualify by eminence. Okay? Now, eminence is a squirrely concept. It's completely subjective. Who is eminent and who is not? These are the things that we don't like to see in documentation. There's an opportunity for lack of transparency, equity problems, for a lot of reasons. I think it's a good thing for us to have eliminated eminence, right? And it's not just our decision, right? It was actually over 10 years ago that statewide academic senate made the rule. There's so one of those whereas, so be it known. It's basically a mandate from academic senate that eminence no longer be able, a candidate may no longer qualify by eminence alone, right? Now, it would be easy enough for us to simply eliminate eminence and leave everything else the same, but we also realize that there are situations where the elimination of eminence would preclude us from hiring somebody that really needs to be teaching for us, right? And this is kind of limited to, particular disciplines. And right now, equivalency is working with disciplines in which we might have some alternative pathway to qualification other than the ones listed 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for level A. Level B, you can see that criterion B4 is also eminence. And so there might be other ways to qualify. Mostly though, it's in the level A where we have a concern about providing candidates with an alternative means of qualifying other than what is delineated by the Chancellor's Office list, as well as, criteria A1 through A5. Okay, and so these are things that are coming your way in Senate and also your way in department chairs, because these are decisions that involve everybody. We're all stakeholders. And so that's it for this video. Layla, to you.